Hey guys, welcome to my guide for the Annihilation Marauder. Uh, at the end of 6.0, we, for the most part, Win 7.0 launches here, hopefully in a few weeks. We are actually going to be using the same rotation. We'll see some things missing from my bars here, but overall, we are still going to have the same rotation. That is not going to change. We aren't going to be adding in any new abilities, so you can actually follow this rotation into 7.0 and you'll be set to go. So even with that kind of looming over us, we are able to still do all the rotations we're doing in 6.0 and not have to completely relearn everything. It's just a few of these things are going to be missing. So that's the real rub. Just a few things are going to be missing, but for the most part, we are still able to follow rotations in most classes, which I think is brilliant, is wonderful. We don't have to relearn, as I said. So this is going to be part one for the Annihilation Marauder. This is going to be going over the opening of your rotation and the core rotation, which is what you'll repeat. Opener is 4 lines of abilities, and the core is 4 lines of abilities. So 8 lines in total that you then cut down to 4 lines of rotation. It's kind of a lot, so we're going to go line by line across all 8 lines, and then we'll be demonstrating what each line will look like and how you can flow from one line into the next. And then in part 2, we will go over my gearing that I currently have here at the end of 6.0. There's still a little bit of time if you do catch this video at the right time to actually kind of have pieces. Many of you may already have some of these pieces, and you can kind of follow along with that. But otherwise, that will be part 2, as well as kind of a stepping stone into what gearing is, because just erring on the side of caution, there's a potential that 7.0 gets delayed again. Hopefully I'm wrong, and there will be a brand new gearing guide on how to gear it in 7.0 once 7.0 launches. So whenever that comes, that video part 2 will still be relevant, and we'll explain why I have certain stats that I do, and why I use certain stats for the Annihilation Marauder. So, but for this video, this is all about rotation, because there's not very much out there. There's really only one guide that I consider even remotely useful to use, and there's no actual guide kind of explaining everything to you. There's a lot of technicality as to what is going on with the Annihilation Marauder, and since no one else is really kind of explaining that technicality in an upfront manner, I figured I would go ahead and step up and kind of explain things, because it can be a very difficult class to learn. There's not a lot about it that's easy to pick up on how to use it, how your abilities play off of one another. So I just feel like it needs to be out there, something that's simple, easy for everyone to use, especially since 7.0 isn't changing anything as far as rotations go to a massive degree. So here we are. So let's go ahead and get started with our first line of our opener. Okay, so you should see on screen right now a screenshot of our opener, and we're going to go ahead and talk about some of the things that you're seeing there, and what it all means. So first line of the opener is the longest, because that's where we're going to kind of use a lot several different things to begin with. So it's a little bit more concurrent for you guys because some of the stuff that I start out doing is in this bottom line here. So I moved them up to positions 1 and 2, just for your convenience. That way you kind of have a better visualization of what I'm really doing. So you can see it goes from one ability to the next in a straight line. And then obviously it goes into the second line here. But I already know what I'm doing. I don't need to have, you know, I don't need to double up on abilities or anything like that. And we're going to get to a certain spot, and we're going to talk about that spot. It will be this spot here because that we'll talk about it when we reach my spot number 7. It should be spot number 9 if you're looking at the more helpful guide. That should be in front of Mike Toon's face. So let's go ahead and start off with the first 2 abilities. Because they are pre-combat abilities. Before I start any battle, any confrontation, these are what I'm popping first. And they're going to be Furious Power and my Primeval Fate Sealer Relic. Now, 7.0, we may not be using Fate Sealer Relics anymore, so that may be taken out. So don't get too comfortable with it, but it may also stay. I actually really like it because it is a nice boost in alacrity for 30 seconds, and that's a pretty long time for combat, for battling. So I may end up keeping it, whatever the next version of the Fate Sealer Relic is in 7.0. But just so you do know, it may get taken out for now. While we're still in 6.0, we are using the Fate Sealer. But let's talk about Furious Power here real quick. It consumes all ability charges of Furious Power. So what that means is that number 4 will drop to a 0 the moment I activate it, which I'll go ahead and do. So as you can see, and it gets this little countdown. In 24 seconds, I'll build back 1 charge of Furious Power. I can activate it again. And as you can see here, that stack of 4 went here. And if I use an ability that would consume a charge, it would have dropped down to a number 3, and so on. The more time I use an ability that eats up Furious Power. So each time you do use that charge, your next melee attack will get a 25% power increase. It's just going to do more damage, which is really, really nice. So it's a nice little power boost for you. And our set bonus gear, which we'll see what happens in 7.0. I haven't been on PTS yet, so I don't know what the implant earpiece set bonuses are going to look like. But if Descent of the Fearless is in there, more than likely that's what we'll be using. But for our current set bonus for 6.0, Descent of the Fearless, you want to have 6 pieces of it. It has a 10% chance to rebuild back a charge of Furious Power, which is really good. And on top of that, you'll actually get a 10% damage increase whenever you gain or use Furious Power. So you're just damage increase, really good whenever you use or build a charge of Furious Power, and then dealing damage has a chance to build you 10% chance to build you that Furious Power, so that way your damage gets increased for 10% by 10% for 10 seconds, which is just silly and stupid and crazy. It's why every knight and warrior in the game simply just uses this one set bonus gear. Okay, so we activate that, so that way it's active the moment we go into combat. It's already there for us, and we're going off. Our first use of it will be, I believe, Force Charge eats it. Then our next use, Annihilate, which is what we're primarily trying to use this for. will use it. So Battering Assault will not eat up Furious Power, Annihilate will, Rupture will, Ravage will, and Vicious Slash will. But the most important thing is that Annihilate will eat one of those Furious Power charges, and we'll get a damage boost with that. So that's why we activate that, and then we activate this immediately after. So that way we have that 30% alacrity boost, and that is pre-combat. The other thing that you want to do pre-combat, and we don't have a helpful dandy guide, but I can quickly show you here. In her heroic utilities, which is going to be interesting. I don't know how we're going to deal with this in 7.0 at the moment, but Brooding is very useful. Reduces the cooldown of your war by 15 seconds. That guy right there. In addition, you build up to 30 Fury over the course of using Channel Hatred, or a toy such as Loosen Up. So if I use that, I'm building Fury. And that will actually proc Berserk and Bloodthirst. And if you're not using the Relentless utility, it'll build 30 stacks for you to use with Predation. Once you use one of these three, it burns that Fury stack, and you have to build it through battle or doing this. And if you wait for a certain amount of time, usually about halfway through, probably there you go. It immediately resets the clock on that, which is very good. You get about a minute before this disappears. So that is so first thing before combat, you want to make sure you build your charge, so that way you can use Berserk or Bloodthirst immediately. And then you will start off with Furious Power and Primeval's Fate Sealer. Okay. So getting into the actual rotation, I know we kind of deviated a little bit. We are going to use Force Charge, followed by Deadly Saber. Deadly Saber is our first dot that we are going to use. And it's an interesting dot because it isn't an actual dot itself, the actual ability. Unlock that real quick. So what it does is it actually turns your next 3 melee attacks into a dot. And they will stack into the same dot, and up to 3 stacks. And then we'll do amounts of damage. The more stacks it has, the more damage it's doing. And every time you apply this dot, it will reset its cooldown and countdown here in the debuff. And we're going to go ahead and just show you what that looks like here real quick. Build up. Here we go. So if I just use 3 abilities, we'll ignore that dot for the moment. But as you can see here, we built it up from 1 to 3, and it dealt quite a bit of damage, and is very nice and useful. So it just refreshes the time on it, and so that's why we use Deadly Saber first. It is our first dot that we are going to use. So it turns Battering Assault, Annihilate, and Rupture, which are our first 3 melee attacks, into dots, and Rupture is another dot that we use, and it will become a double dot essentially, which is really cool, really awesome. And it'll deal even, you're just setting up even more damage. So, so after using Deadly Saber, we'll use Battering Assault. And then before we move on to Annihilate, we're going to go ahead and use Bloodthirst, which, if we had been charging our Fury before combat, like we should do, we'll just get it right back. There you go. We can now use Bloodthirst right immediately after Battering Assault. So we are going to go ahead and use that. Boom, there's Bloodthirst. That actually makes Frenzy available, and what Frenzy will do is build us back that 30 stack. And so we do that one after the other, so that way we can go into Annihilate. Annihilate's going to do more damage because it's going to have Bloodthirst available to it. And it's going to apply that dot from Deadly Saber. And then moving from there, we go to a Force Rend, which before we use Rupture, we are then going to activate that Berserk that we can now use because of that Frenzy we activated. So we'll activate that. We'll use Rupture. And that once we use that Rupture, that will apply the final dot of Deadly Saber. And so we'll have all 3 dots used right then and there. And so using Berserk just before that Rupture will actually make the stack of 3 Deadly Saber, the Force Rend, and the Rupture all critically hit 100% every time it does a tick of damage. So that's why we want to use Rupture in this position, kind of between 4 and 5, at least for how I have things set up on my bars. You can definitely have Berserk here, but because this is on and off, there's lots of periods where you're not going to have Berserk available to you. I don't have it in actually in the rotation like here because it's kind of, it would just be eating dead space, and I kind of want this row just to be attacks for the most part. So that's how we're using Berserk, Bloodthirst, and Frenzy. And then you'll notice my Adrenal is next. This Adrenal gives me a critical boost. I primarily do a lot of legacy content. And so building up critical by 1,000 is really helpful. That brings me to 4,296 critical, which is really, really freaking good. That's going to allow me to do even more damage, especially once we start using this Ravage. And then we get to Vicious Slash. Now, Vicious Slash, in the spot that you're seeing, you'll see that it has 2 Vicious Slashers. What you're now seeing on screen is Vicious Slash is equaling our filler priority list. So from this moment on, anytime you see Vicious Slash up here, that's not actually Vicious Slash. That's just, I'm just using Vicious Slash as a representation, a symbol for the filler priority list, which is this list here, thereabouts. And so we're going to go ahead and talk about that real quick as to what the filler priority list is, what it means, and how it's really just Vicious Slash. So let's go ahead and talk about it. So first ability you see is our Dual Saber Throw. Dual Saber Throw, when procced, which I'm going to go ahead and get it procced real quick. And it'll take it a sec. There we go. As you can see, it's glowing. So really, that Dual Saber Throw is going to be a procced Dual Saber Throw. And it's going to hit much harder than Vicious Slash will. And so we want to use Dual Saber Throw over Vicious Slash before we would use Vicious Slash. Next, you're going to see that Vicious Throw is higher on the list than Vicious Slash. The reality is Vicious Throw and Vicious Slash are tied because we can't use Vicious Throw until we have until the target is at 29% health. I know it says only usable on targets at or below 30% max health. It's actually 29% health. I've tested this extensively. If a target is at 30% health, you cannot use a Vicious Throw. It has to be 29% or lower. Is where you can use Vicious Slash. I think there's probably just something wrong in the actual mathematics of the game for that 1% difference. It's not a massive difference, but there have been moments where the target is remaining at 30% for about 5 seconds before it dropped down to to that 29%, and then Vicious Throw. And if I'm just trying to get that Vicious Throw in, that's time I could have just used a Vicious Slash. So because of that, I can only use that at 29% or less. 70% of the fight, I'm using Vicious Slash. Really, 71% of the fight. you're using Vicious Slash in place of Vicious Throw. Once Vicious Throw is available to you, definitely prioritize it over Vicious Slash. Vicious Throw will do more damage than Vicious Slash. You can see there's easily a 7 to 6k difference, or 7 to 9k difference even between the two abilities. So definitely use Vicious Throw when you can. And the reason these three abilities are the top three abilities that we're using is because of Spiteful Saber, our tactical, which reads out Ruptures dealing 10% more damage. We'll talk about that in a second. But the next line is what is more important about how our rotation is working, because this line makes it so that way you don't ever have to use Rupture again. So Vicious Slash, Vicious Throw, and Dual Saber Throw refreshes the duration of Rupture's bleed effect and take its damage. Essentially meaning when we leap into combat here, and I apply Rupture, and we'll build up some rage here. As you can see, it is refreshing, and if I could use it, I would use Vicious Throw here. But it's making it so that way I can just keep Rupture's bleed effect on permanently, which essentially means Vicious Slash, Dual Saber Throw, and Vicious Throw is just Rupture. It's the equivalent mean of just spamming the hell out of Rupture. That's what it is. And so I can use more powerful attacks here to essentially keep using Rupture over and over and over forever. So that's part of why Annihilation is so good in 6.0, because I don't have to use Rupture. I don't have to have it in the rotation. The only time I need to use it is in the opening, just to apply the dot. But after that, I don't have to, so long as I do a good job. Let's say I have to go do a mechanic and it falls off, right, in a boss fight. All I have to do is reapply it once, and then I can just do Vicious Slash, or I can do Dual Saber Throw. And you can use Dual Saber Throw. It'll still refresh the bleed here, even when it's not procced, which is nice. So do that, and then we'll go. Oh, of course, it procced when for me. But even when it's not procced, you can use it. It's just proc Dual Saber Throw will do more damage than not procced Dual Saber Throw. But if you need to just keep that Rupture of alive, and here we go. So it's coming off. It's coming off. Reset. There you go. It's reapplied. Now you can keep it alive. So if you have to do something, you're at range for whatever reason, and you just want to keep damage up on a specific target, you can reset it and keep the damage going, and then hopefully you can get back to your main target before Rupture goes away. And if it does, just reapply Rupture. It's fine. It's not a big deal. And so going back to the filler priority list, then you'll next see Battering Assault and Assault, as well as Rupture. Those are your low-end priorities, and we're still kind of prioritizing some things over others. Battering Assault builds us Rage. So after our three abilities that reset Rupture, Battering Assault is the most important because it builds us the most Rage. Then it would be Assault if you're kind of low like I am right now. I'm in the middle of a fight and I'm trying to hit Vicious Slash. I can't do anything. I'm waiting for Battering Assault and Force Rend to come off cooldown. I'm waiting. I can just use an Assault and get back some Rage. I could probably get another Vicious Slash. That amount of time, I should get Force Rend back. That should be enough time for Force Rend to come off cooldown. And then I can use Force Rend. Force Rend builds me Rage. I can do an ability or two. I can use Battering Assault. There's a whole flow to it. Um, so you'll sometimes find yourself using assault just to kind of keep the flow of combat, which is really important. And the rupture bleed has 9 seconds. You have 9 seconds where you actually don't have to refresh it. So it's okay to do other things other than vicious throw, dual saber throw, and vicious slash, just because you have that 9 second buffer. And then just make sure you get a vicious slash in or dual saber throw in, and you'll be good. You'll keep that uptime on the bleed. You won't have to take the time to use rupture, which is just weaker than vicious slash, even with the 10% boost from Spiteful Saber. It's like 600, 700 more damage. So it pushes it close into like more into a 7K range, which is still pretty significantly less than using Vicious Slash, which is why we pretty much are going to do our best to not use Rupture again. We only want to use it if our target loses the Rupture bleed. That's the only time we want to use the Rupture again. Okay, so that is our filler priority list. So going back to line 1, which should be back here. So whenever you see Vicious Slash in the various lines we're going to be going over, that's what that Vicious Slash really means. I'm not saying use Vicious Slash. I'm saying use your filler priority list. Now, that said, 80% of the time, it's going to be a Vicious Slash that you're going to use. You can't use Vicious Throw until 29% health. You can't use Dual Saber Throw. It has all the time. It has a 15.8 second cooldown on it. So it's you can't use it all the time. It's a one-time use every 15, 16 seconds. So you're not always going to have that available. Sometimes you're perfectly good on rage. You don't need to use battering assault. You don't need to use assault. 80% of the time, it's vicious slash. That's what filler means, which is why I made it the symbol for our filler priority list. So wherever you see a vicious slash, just know that doesn't mean you're only using vicious slash in that spot. More than likely you are, but there's some spots where you want to use a battering assault, and you'll see it as we go through the lines. I'm going to use battering assault. I'll use assault if absolutely needed. I will, if in the first line, right after that Ravage, if Dual Saber Throw is procced, I'm throwing that Dual Saber Throw over Vicious Slash, okay? So that's the most important thing. If anything you take away from this video, filler filler is important. It's what a lot of what you're doing, and breaking down that filler. Just know Vicious Slash is what you'll primarily use um, in those filler slots, um, and and you can do other things. You'll have to do other things than Vicious Slash, but it's mainly going to be Vicious Slash. Okay, so that's the reality of the filler priority list. Is you have quite a few of them. Just most of the time, it's a Vicious Slash because you'll have the rage to do it. You're gonna be, you'll notice that you're gonna hit battering assault, get 6, hit an annihilate, hit a force rend. You're gonna have all this rage available to you. So that there's a really good ebb and flow with everything, and a lot of the time it is making that decision. There's a lot of discipline to not overextend with Vicious Slash. It happens, especially when you're learning it, that you'll use Vicious Slash too many times. There is a reason why we're ending with 2 fillers, because we don't want to overextend and waste all of our rage. Because if that happens, you're gonna need to quickly hit an assault, so that way you have rage to kind of do stuff. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at the first line of the opener. Okay, in action, and how we build on it. I'm just going to check something. Once I'm done with this channel, I'm actually going to break this now. We are going to reset this. I don't want to use Thirst for Rage here at the moment. I'm going to give myself for raid later. If with this, whenever I use Bloodthirst, I'll get 12 stacks of Rage. You're not always going to have Thirst for Rage, so I don't want anyone to. And you're not always going to be the one that's popping Bloodthirst either. If you're playing with other Marauders, another Marauder may be the one that's popping Bloodthirst over you. Only one Marauder can use Bloodthirst, so you may not get that benefit of getting all that Rage. So I don't want you guys comfortable with having that buffer, that 12 Rage just there. So we're gonna go. I'm gonna do things at my normal speed. I want you all to see it. How fast you can do this, and but for you guys, as you're practicing it, go slowly, do one thing at a time. Add 1 or 2 abilities, 3 abilities at most. Learn it, memorize it. There's a lot that we have to cover. But this, hopefully, once we get into the second, third lines, we'll go a little bit quicker, because there's a lot of setup and an understanding to explain because of that filler priority list. And again, those Vicious Slashes you're seeing up here are not actual Vicious Slashers, but odds are I'm using Vicious Slash. Okay? Okay, so let's go ahead and do this thing. There we go. That's how fast you'll do it. It is exactly that fast, and you'll see as we do more and more of the lines, as we add more lines, my parse will go up as well. Okay, so line number 2 is actually kind of fun. We are actually going to start with a filler. This is about one of the in the opener. We actually will start off with fillers in lines 2 and 3, but everything else will every other line will actually start with Annihilate. So I'm going to go ahead, build up that Fury again, just to have it. Okay, so line number 2. As you can now see, it is going to be filler, Deadly Saber, followed by 2 fillers, Force Rend, a Furious Power, and Annihilate, and ends with a filler. Okay? So there's a lot of filler there. And as we go and you watch it, pay attention to what I'm popping. I will be doing quite a bit of Vicious Slashes, but I'm going to pop in a Battering Assault. If I don't have enough Rage, I'll hit an Assault, and I may hit a Vicious Slash before I go into that Force Rend in this line, okay? So let's go ahead and do the first 2 lines. We're not going to wait for the Fate Sealer relic. We're just going to go ahead and start it. And it's important to note that I'm waiting for between Force Rend and Rupture to use Berserk. As you can see, I lost my Rage. There we go. There's line 2. So as you saw, before I hit that Force Rend, I didn't have enough Rage built up, so I wasn't really going to be able to do anything. I would have been doing nothing for a solid second, so I knew that was happening. I used Assault. Let's go ahead and do that one more time and show you what it looks like. And there you go. So as you can see, that was actually a little bit different. Um, Dual Saber Throw didn't proc immediately. I had a lot more rage, although because I still had rage built up, I believe, from the first fight. So I didn't need to use Assault when I got down to the point that I was going to use Force Rend in the second line. And so I was able to just use quite a bit of Vicious Slashers, and then you'll usually have about 2 to 3 uh, if you're solid on rage. So I would use that Force Rend. That gives me enough to where I can use that. And then right at that moment, my Dual Saber procced. So I was able to use that and kind of save on rage, save on wasting rage instead of using up a Vicious Slash, which would eat into my rage. But I was more than prepared, more than ready to use an assault if need be. So always kind of you need to pay attention to what's going on in your rage pool. And if you're good to go, you're good to go. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into line number 3. So here is where we're gonna use Ravage again for the first time. But to start off, we're gonna use 3 fillers. So Vicious Slashes. Use whatever is available to you. If Dual Saber Throw still hasn't procced, it may proc within these 3 filler spots. But you're gonna probably be using Vicious Slash. You may use a second dose of Battering Assault here, so and build up Rage, because we're going to be once we use those 3 filler spots, we're going to use Deadly Saber followed by Ravage. Now with Ravage, it's only going to apply 1 dot of the Deadly Saber. It doesn't use it for every melee hit. It's just every melee attack. So don't expect Ravage to apply all 3 dots for you. It will be spread out over time until you use another melee ability. Okay? And then we'll do a filler and then Force Rend to end the 3rd line. So let's go ahead and see what all 3 of those look like. And we will be using Bloodthirst here. And again, pre-combat using Fury, and we're going to start off with our Furious Power and Relic. Okay. I went a little further because I was going to be starting the next line there once I used that Force Rend. But that's pretty much what it looked like. If you notice, in the second line, I actually kind of overextended with the Vicious Slash, but I had plenty of rage. And I used it all up, and then I hit an Assault, and Force Rend was still on cooldown. So I'd actually used up all of my filler slots, but I would have been doing nothing for a second. So I decided to use an Assault, and I built enough rage I could hit the Vicious Slash, which essentially I got 3 uses of that Assault because Vicious Slash is double the damage of Assault. So because I hit the Assault and then the Vicious Slash, that Assault was essentially me using Assault 3 times as far as damage is concerned. And then I was able to use Force Rend. I hit the Furious Power and use that Annihilate. Or I was about to use that. Use that Annihilate and then get into the 1 filler of that ends line number 2, and then get into the 3 filler. And here I probably could have waited. I could have held off on using Battering Assault, but I decided to just kind of be ahead of the game. and have a nice pool of rage. And then I kind of waited. There was probably a half second of waiting for Deadly Saber to come off cooldown. Use that, and then use the Ravage. I think at that point Dual Saber was up, and then Force Run, and then I use that Vicious Slash instead of the Annihilate, which will actually be the start of our fourth and final line of our opener rotation. And then after that, we get into the core. Now, the thing about this last line of the opener rotation is that it's also the last line of our core. So, using the last line of the core or of the opener, you are also learning the last line of the core as well. And the same thing is actually fairly true of line number 3. There is a little bit of a difference in line number 3, but for the core, but for the most part, it's pretty similar. Right. So let's go ahead and go over that. So once we use that Force Rend at the end of the opener, you're going to hit a Furious Power and then an Annihilate. And then you're going to use 4 fillers. Most of it, more than likely, a Vicious Slash. Maybe an Assault, kind of depending on Rage. If you overextend and Battering Assault isn't available for whatever reason. And then you're going to hit, once you use those 4 fillers, you're going to hit a Deadly Saber and 1 last filler. Okay, so let's go ahead and do the entire opener. Of course, build our Fury. We want to have that Berserk. Always want to have that Berserk. 100% crits on our dots is very important. Let's go ahead and do this. Full opening rotation. And there you have it. That is the full opening rotation. Now, for some of you that are a little more keen-eyed, you're probably going to guess what the start of the core is. It was actually right next to the last ability we used, which was Battering Assault, which was going to be Annihilate. So for the core, Annihilate is going to be the first thing we do in each line. So let's go ahead and go over that. It's pretty short and sweet compared to the first line of the opener, but that's because we don't have Furious Power, our Relic. We aren't popping Bloodthirst and Frenzy. We're not at the point where we're using the Adrenal again. So there's a lot of things we're kind of just taking away. We're taking out Force Charge because we're already on the target. There's a lot that we don't have to do compared to line number 1 of the opener. Right, so we are going to do Annihilate with Furious Power with Annihilate, whatever order. Try and get that Furious Power before Annihilate. Then it's going to be Force Rend, a filler, more than likely Vicious Slash, then Ravage, followed by 2 more filler. Okay? So let's go ahead and go through the opener into the first line of the core. And as always, we're building up that Fury. Okay, so I actually did mess a little bit there, kind of got lost and then refound myself, refound my position. That happens. It's gonna happen to you. Happens to me. And I did my best to kind of realign myself, um, and get myself back into position. And we did get our way into the first line of the court. It happens. It's okay. I do believe I screwed up the last line there. I should have used a battering assault a little bit sooner than I did, but that's all right. That's okay. Um, all right, so but you still kind of saw that flow, even with that mess up. You still saw it, which is what's important. And like you can still just kind of see how things are flowing. And when you do screw things up, you're off. Your timing's a little off, and you'll notice like my parse more than likely paid the price there. And there's things I did to kind of mitigate. You saw me throw in an assault because it was necessary, it was needed. So let's go ahead and go over line number 2 of the core. Of course, it starts with Furious Power and Annihilate in that order, followed by a Deadly Saber, and then, which actually I might have gone into it, but Furious Power, Annihilate, Deadly Saber. If you're doing things correctly, it will be a Battering Assault. That's next. And then more than likely a Vicious Slash Dual Saber Throw if it's procced. Then a Force Rend and 2 fillers. Okay, let's go ahead from beginning of opener to line 2 of the core. And hopefully I won't lose my positioning this time. And since we don't have Bloodthirst, we will not be using it. All right, there we go. Almost screwed things up, but we managed to keep our cool and do it properly all the way to line 2. So let's go ahead and go over line number 3 of the core. As you probably guessed, Furious Power into Annihilate. And then into blah 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 into 2 fillers, Deadly Saber, then a Ravage, and then a filler, and we're gonna end it with a Force Rend. So very similar to the third line of the opener, which we're gonna have it underneath the line number 3 of the core, just so that way you can see the comparison. It's very similar, but instead of having another set of filler, we are actually replacing it with an Annihilate and Furious Power. So that's the main difference. And then, of course, as I said earlier, line number 4 is just line number 4 of the opener. So we've already know it. You just have to, reapply it in that position. But let's go ahead and go all the way through line number 3 of the core. And we'll go ahead and use all of our buffing abilities and items. And there we go. That is opener all the way to line 3. And then let's go ahead and do the full rotation. We will, of course, put up line number 4 just so you can see it. But it is Annihilate with Furious Power, obviously Furious Power first, followed by 4 fillers, a Deadly Saber, and then one last filler before we start back at Annihilate. And we repeat line number 1 of the core. And we're not going to wait for the relic to come back or for that to reach four full stacks. And there we go. We even did first line of the core, and we would have gone through the motions and gone through the full core again, and that's the full thing. There you go. That's it. We now know how to use Annihilation, how things are going to work and play together. It was a little slow because I wasn't using the relic. That does matter, but I'm going to go ahead now and just jump in and do what I would normally do. Kind of just doing things as I properly would when I'm just out in an operation, and you can go ahead and see kind of how I do things just a little differently, and how I set myself up to use abilities and all that. So I will be doing a little bit of a cut here to jump just to get Bloodthirst back. So I'll see you guys in just a moment. All right, and we're back. Bloodthirst just came off cooldown. Let's go ahead and see what we can do. And in fact, I won't use this stuff. Kind of mess with what you would normally see, what this would normally look like. I do recommend talking to your guild leaders and talk to them about the Zeal set bonus. This will just give you an inherent 5% alacrity. I do have just very minimal, very little alacrity in my gear, but we will go over that in part 2, where we talk about this gear here and why it's very different from what you probably are using yourselves. All right, let's go ahead and do this. We'll do this for just a couple minutes. See how well we do here with the parse. All right, I think that's good. I was gonna say we were doing about a 21, I 20 like a 20.6 to 21K. Um, so it is gonna be different for you guys as you test things out. Don't worry about doing 20K parses, 22, 21, whatever, 23, 24K parses. Um, that's for, Nightmare Raider crap. Most of you aren't going to be doing that. But I can guarantee you, if you really dedicate yourself, learn this rotation, um, definitely get kind of work on your gear, min max it as best you can. If you're able to, get the gold amplifiers, get the gold periodic intensities. If you have the wealth to do it, it is expensive. I understand that. But get whatever periodic intensity you can. It will help your parses out. Um, you will do phenomenally in whatever content you're doing. I guarantee you that you will do phenomenally. And this gear really isn't meant to go up against kind of just this dummy without me changing its stats. I am missing 1,000 power. Um, there's a lot of that. That's more of a gearing video, which we will definitely talk about. Um, there's a lot as to why I'm not doing like a 22K parse there, but that's okay. So 20K, 21K is pretty decent. Don't let anyone put you down because you're doing a 19, 20K parse. That's still pretty good, especially if you're not a hard mode raider. Um, you're not a nim raider. You're doing fine. If you go up on your training dummy and you do that, you're doing about a 19 to 20K. You're good to go. You can do most content and be absolutely fine. If you are trying to do hard mode, do your best, to work into that 20K, 21, 22K. Buy this droid. If you press Y, or generally press Y, you open up your legacy window. Come into, where is it? Other? Yeah, into other. Yeah, the repair droid will be that little guy. Um, click on him. You can buy stuff from him. You can repair your gear. Buy these two things right here. You can use these to adjust the dummy's health to 6.5 million, as well as see. It will also take away, if your guild is using it, it'll take away this bonus, which it would drop me down to from 13.85 down to an 8.85% alacrity, and you'll get to see kind of what you're doing against most legacy operations. That's Karaga's Palace, Eternity Vault, the Dread operations, pretty much every operation but Nature of Progress, Duxon, and you'll be able to kind of gauge yourself for hard mode operations a little bit better. If I was more using gear that's set up for Duxon, I'd probably see more of that 22, 23K gear simply because my power is there. So, but with this gear, it'll be about a 21, any from a high 20 to 22K parse is what I'll do. So yeah, that is rotation, guys. That's your single target. If you want to do AOE, uh, real simply, real quick, leap in, force melt, rupture, do a smash. Make sure everything, the targets are all grouped. Smash will spread your dots. You can use a dual saber throw to refresh bleed, and you can keep using smash. refresh, rupture. You can keep using smash to just spread your dots. Um, I don't have it on this tune, but you can swap out Spiteful Saber for Malmoro Mask. That will turn your Annihilate into an AoE hit. It will do an AoE, and your numbers will jump real high. You'll do like 25 to 32k once you kind of get used to it. But that's pretty much all you have to do, and then it's just building back rage so you can keep using Force Strand and Rupture and Smash. That's pretty much my advice on AoE. The guide down below that I have linked by the wonderful Danico, who is, as far as I'm aware, is the inventor and curator of this rotation. Shout outs to him and everything he does. He does stream. Go hunt him down. Go check him out. Great dude. He does have an official AoE guide. I don't bother with it because I kind of don't care about mobs. If there's ads in an operation, this, and that is pretty much all I really need to do. And you can fluff your numbers and you look impressive. There you go. That's my advice on AoE. But if you really want a solid rotation, he shows you what a rotation looks like with Malmoro Mask, and if you don't have Malmoro Mask, how to do the rotation from there. So yeah, so that is rotation, guys. I know it was a long video. I want to appreciate anyone that has stuck around to this point. Break it down. Do 2 to 3 abilities at a time. Just slowly learn it and memorize it. That's half the battle. And eventually, you'll do numbers like this. If the gearing guide for my Annihilation Marauder isn't out yet, it will be soon. Otherwise, you should see a link to go to that video somewhere pop up around here, wherever that may be, and check it out. It's a nice combination. I know this is coming out kind of just before 7.0, but at least this rotation, you can take into 7.0, and you'll still do really well. And hopefully, I've been able to reduce a lot of confusion. Because you don't, like, once you know the rotation, you don't actually need it as much anymore. Because the best thing about this rotation is it's teaching you the fundamentals of Annihilation. There a lot of things I'm still learning and finding out about this class. Better ways to kind of do things. So yeah, there's always something new to learn. Always something new to learn. Even when you think you've mastered something, there's always something new to learn. So I do hope that you were able to take something from this. If nothing else, I hope you now know filler essentially means vicious slash. And then when you're running low on rage, it more means battering assault or assault. And you're just and again, do your best, guys, to never allow battering assault to be done immediately before or after you use a force rend. Always have an ability in between these two, because if I were to do that, they're now on practically the same cooldown, and you can waste all of that rage, and then you're waiting about 3 to 2 seconds of not doing anything, and then you will lose your parse and look bad and not good. Anyway, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.